Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Midwestern Marx Institute live broadcast. My name's Eddie Liger. I'm here with the philosopher extraordinaire Carlos Garrido. Got a lot of great topics to break down for you today. We have the death of Alexei Navalny in Russia, sort of US-backed agent in Russia who was imprisoned in 2020 amid allegations of poisoning. We will talk about the controversy surrounding Benjamin Netanyahu's son, who is hanging out in Florida in a $5,000 a month apartment while Israel is waging a genocide in Gaza. We'll talk about the controversy surrounding Jewish reggae singer Matisyahu, who recently had some workers protest his concert in response to his Zionist politics, and he accused them of anti-Semitism. So we'll break that down and a handful of other great topics. So excited to get into it.
How you doing, brother?
Good. I'm happy to be back on the stream. I did one earlier this week with Donald Corder of the Revolution Report, but I'm ready for sort of regular stream here.
That was an excellent interview. The concept he used for the 90s era in Russia, the era of naivety, is so good. And I really hope he writes that book. I know it's going to have a lot of gems in it, a lot of really good information. And I mean, the documentaries he's done have been, amazing. He did one on the affairs that have been going on over the last 8-9 years now, 10 years, I guess, in the Donbass, which was really, really good. It came out at the beginning of the SMOs. So it was really informative for many people. And now this Color Revolution documentary is also superb. I've seen quite a few people in our audience mention in the comments that after watching that, they feel like they have a really good grasp on color revolutions. And it's important to have a good grasp on that, because that's the modus operandi of the U.S. empire for overthrowing states.
Yeah, and coincidentally, one of the things that Don and I said during that interview was, imagine how many color revolution attempts have been waged against Russia that have been thwarted because Russia's aware of what the West wants to do. And I mean, that's exactly what Alexei Navalny was an agent of regime change that the U.S. was trying to prop up. He was a Juan Guaido type figure. And Vijay Prashad lays this out in his book, Washington Bullets. Every U.S. regime change effort has a man on the ground, has someone on the ground who they want to replace the regime with, a leader who they want to replace the regime with. And that was Navalny. Now, it didn't work. He was polling at around 2% in 2020 when he was locked up. It's mostly like the Russian radlibs who support him. But either way, it shows what happens when you make yourself a puppet of Western regime change. The West will use you. They'll push you to try and destabilize whatever government they're targeting. And then when they're done with you, they'll drop you, and I hadn't heard anything about Navalny for the past 2 years. Obviously, there was a big outrage in Western media when he was imprisoned, and there was the allegations of poisoning. But then when he was sitting in a jail cell, the West totally forgot about him. And now that he's dead, they're going to use him to try and push forward Biden's spending bill, his hawkish $60 billion towards Ukraine and $14 billion towards Israel bill. But it's so cynical. Like these ruling class mouthpieces don't care about Navalny. They don't care about democracy in Russia. They want to overturn Russia's government so they can recolonize the country, so they can plunder its resources like they did after the collapse of the USSR. And Navalny's just a means to an end. So they'll use him as a propaganda tactic. But these people who are feigning concern for Navalny don't actually care about Navalny. They care about regime change in Russia. It's a cautionary tale on why you don't make yourself a regime change puppet of the West.
Right. What's the saying that it's bad to be an enemy of the U.S., but it's perhaps worse to be a friend, because they always leave you hanging, unless you're Guaido, where you get a nice little teaching job at the University of Miami. But Navalny is a figure like many, many others, thousands of others, that has gone through all the key institutions of the Western imperialist countries, used to systematically overthrow the governments that exist outside of their sphere of influence. He was a graduate of the Yale I think it's World Fellows program that trained a lot of the same coup leaders for the Maidan neo-Nazi coup. He's someone who has been in close contact with Bellingcat, with the NED, and with other similar imperialist outfits. And his role was very clear: to attempt to ferment a color revolution in Russia. The backing that he had was extremely small, and it was of an extremely wealthy part of the Russian oligarchs and some middle-class college liberal elements, especially people that are much more favorable to the West, because in terms of his geopolitics, that's where he was. He was extremely pro-West and in favor of cutting ties with the new burgeoning multipolar world that Russia is definitely an integral component of and developing alongside with. His politics were a little eclectic. Like, he endorsed Bernie Sanders, and there was parts of the liberal / left-wing media in the U.S. that spins him as a sort of social democrat leftist figure. That's definitely not the case. There's ample evidence of him being almost like a fascistic-like nationalist, saying horrendously racist things about the people in the Caucasus. So it's an opportunist through and through, a tool of U.S. imperialism, and he died. The media is speculating on whether it was Putin. It's something that's sustained implicitly in all of the coverage. The Latvian president has been, I think, the only person I've seen say that he was brutally murdered by Putin's government, along with a few other people that have talked about him being murdered. But it's implicit in all of the Western media coverage. And honestly, whether I haven't seen any evidence for that, but the reality is that in the U.S., if you're found with the amount of evidence that they found for Navalny being an agent of a government that wants to use you to overthrow that government, that's called high treason. And the punishment for that in the U.S. is death. So we can't be hypocrites here, because if Navalny were doing in the U.S. what he's done in Russia, he would be killed too. But I don't know. Do we want to bring up some of the past comments that Navalny has made?
Yeah, let's play this video of him talking to a close associate and asking for money from the MI6 to start a color revolution in Russia. MI6 is obviously the British intelligence services, the British version of the CIA. That deals with foreign policy issues. There's another, it's like M15, deals with like domestic issues. But either way, this shows you why Navalny was locked up. And something that Donald and I also talked about on our last stream about Russia is their foreign agency law, where they basically passed a law saying that if you're accepting money from an organization like the NED, a U.S. regime change outfit, that's illegal, which the U.S. was one of the first countries to push a law like that. But here is evidence of Navalny being a regime change regime change puppet of the West. I mean, undeniable evidence here.
Would be, we would expand our activities, of course, with a little money. If somebody would spend, I don't know, $10-20 million a year on supporting this, we would see quite a different picture. And this is, not a big amounts of money for people who have billions at stake in this game. So that's the message that I'm trying to project in my fundraising effort and talking to people in business community. So you need to play on different chessboards. Mass protests, civil initiatives, propaganda, establishing contacts with the elite and explaining to them that we are reasonable people and we're not going to demolish everything and take away their assets, things like that. So we'll see what comes out of that. So this broadly describes what I do.
Well, yeah, I mean, not a small job.
If we had
So there you have him asking for millions of dollars in fundraising and then explicitly saying, we're going to govern in line with the elites who have billions of dollars at stake here. Straight up saying, I will be a defender of the elites if they give me the money that I need to challenge or overthrow Putin's government. So that's what Navalny was. That's why he was imprisoned. Who knows what happened with the allegations of poisoning? Who knows how true those were? What actually happened there? Who knows what happened recently in prison? There's a chance he died of natural causes. There's a chance that he was done in by the Russian government, even though Putin doesn't really have anything to gain from that, as Marius pointed out. And there's a big chance that he was done in by the CIA, that he was done in by his own supporters. As we said, they might have said, screw it, this color revolution's not working. Let's use him as a propaganda tool, an anti-Russia propaganda tool. So all those possibilities are on the table. But again, that's why you don't make yourself an asset of NATO.
To hark back to the great framework that Putin provided in the interview with Tucker, you have to ask cui bono, who benefits, but also who has the means. And Russia definitely has the means, but they don't benefit. Putin just hit it out of the ballpark in the interview with Tucker. I'm sure that the popularity ratings, if there's even statistics that show that, of Putin in the West, have gone up. There's no way that the hundreds of millions of people, I saw some statistics say that if you compile all of the sources where people could have watched, you have something near to 1 billion impressions, which impressions are now getting called views on X, by the way. So there's nothing for Russia to gain killing this man now. I mean, they're not threatened by him politically. He's got like 2% of the vote in 2020. The only real opposition, regardless of how much the mainstream legacy media is framing Navalny as the opposition candidate, the only real opposition in Russia at the current moment is the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. So that opposition is, of course, not going to get any airtime in the West, because the West is a lot more scared of that party than of Putin's party. But ask always that in any political matter: cui bono, who benefits? And there is no clear benefit here for Putin, for Russia, especially not at the current conjuncture. It feels like this, as you mentioned, could very likely have came from the same people that propped up Navalny in order to sort of scrap away at the benefits that the Tucker interview did for Putin and Russia's image globally.
True, and it's interesting to see how the Western outlets try and portray Navalny too. They, as you said, portraying him as a sort of social democrat or a liberal, when actually he's an ultra-nationalist. And it reminds me of a chapter in Michael Parenti's Black Shirts and Reds called "Must We Adore Václav Havel," I believe was the guy's name, who was one of these leaders in Eastern Europe who was propped up by the U.S. He was a playwright, and sort of an artist, and he was promoted as this progressive avant-garde guy. but he was an anti-communist dictator. He outlawed opposition parties. He shuttered opposition media. He basically made dissent towards his regime illegal, as the U.S. is championing this guy as a promoter of freedom and democracy. So this is oftentimes what they do with their men on the ground in these countries where they're trying to foment regime change. And that I would recommend people go read that chapter by Parenti, because it was written a long time ago, but it exactly explains what the U.S. still does, what they do with these clowns like Navalny, Zelensky, Guaido. They're puppets in these countries. So for evidence of Navalny's politics, well, there's a video of him saying that he holds all the positions that he used to hold, which pokes holes in the Western narrative that he's no longer an ultra-nationalist. But check out this campaign ad that he ran in like 2007.
Здравствуйте! Сегодня мы поговорим о борьбе с насекомыми. Никто из нас не застрахован от того, что в наш дом заползет таракан. Фу, ну или в форточку залетит муха. Все мы знаем, что от мух отлично помогает мухобойка, а от тараканов – тапка. Но что делать, если таракан окажется слишком велик, а муха не в меру агрессивна? Ну а в этом случае я рекомендую.
So this was at a time when Russia was getting set to vote on Chechen independence. And independence, or sorry, not independence, but making Chechens citizens of Russia and making them part of Russia, the countries, the Caucasus countries, Dagestan and Chechnya, or republics, I should call them, where the people are majority Muslim, right? And Navalny's always been this sort of anti-Muslim character. And in this ad, he's comparing Chechens and Muslims to cockroaches and then saying he recommends a handgun and shooting them. So this was his response to Chechen people becoming part of Russia, is calling them cockroaches. So this is the kind of ultra-nationalist politician that Navalny has always been. And these are the kind of people that the U.S. tries to prop up in other countries while calling them, champions of democracy.
Absolutely. We put out a tweet about this where we said that Western imperialists love propping up fascistic figures abroad to promote their regime change operations. Let's look at this short video of a rally and see if there's any signals that you find historically familiar. Again, these are all very nationalist, anti-immigrant, racist, far-right, fascistic rallies. And in a Der Spiegel interview not too long ago, Navalny affirmed that he still holds all the political views in that area that brought him into politics in the first place. So this is basically the same guy that died today, but let's give it a watch.
Моим сторонникам, которые удивлены, я хочу сказать, что удивляться не нужно. Я 4-й год подряд хожу на русский марш. Им стоит бояться! Им стоит бояться! Да! Кавказ соси! Кавказ соси! Кавказ! Аллах, пидорас! Уходите отсюда! Москва для москвичей! Русские вперед! Русские вперед! Русские вперед! Совершенно нормально и уместно. И ничего опасного в этом мероприятии я не вижу. Моим сторонникам.
So, there's no getting away from that. You had the guy with the Deutschland Germany hat doing the Sieg Heil, and it's an extremely fascistic rally, and he's fully in support of it. And these are the figures that are propped up by the West. These are the figures that the liberals and the leftists and everyone else is going to be mourning today, and implying that big bad man Putin ousted him from this universe. So it's absurd. None of the actual supposedly liberal values that these countries enunciate themselves with, that they claim to believe, they actually believe, because look at the sort of people they prop up. And just like they prop him up, they prop up neo-Nazis in Ukraine and extremism in other areas as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I mean, just the final word on this, it's interesting for me as a wrestler and combat sports athlete. I have a huge respect for the Chechen people and the people of Dagestan, which is the Caucasus mountain region. And I've done a video actually highlighting how good they are at combat sports and how good they are at wrestling. So this is how small Chechnya is. It's this tiny little region, and Dagestan is not much larger. And then look at all the successful mixed martial artists that they've had. The current 155-pound champion of the UFC is from Dagestan. But this is how many good mixed martial arts fighters they've had, like 100 of them. And this is how many good wrestlers that they've had. It's just an insane, and these are like world and Olympic champions being produced from this small little mountain region. And then you have these ultra nationalists like Navalny leading groups of whiny white nationalists and students, calling these people cockroaches, calling people like Buvasar Satiev, 7-time world champion, cockroaches. So that's what struck me there. I think that Navalny, what they should have done with him is thrown him in the cage with Khabib Nurmagomedov, probably the greatest fighter of all time from the Caucasus region, and see who's a cockroach then. You know, maybe Khabib will be pounding him and say like he did the McGregor, be like, talk now. Except we can't do that because Navalny's dead. But yeah, super ultra nationalist guy, and it's just disgusting. Anytime you hear racist rhetoric like that towards, especially when it's towards people who you know, and when you see that kind of bigoted attack on people who you have a deep respect for.
And it's the complete opposite of the legacy of Russians. To have a protest, a demonstration like that with people doing the Sieg Heil, with people doing the Sieg Heil with a Deutschland, a German hat, it just spits in the face of the legacy of 27 million Russians that lost, Soviet people that lost their life fighting against Nazism and these ideologies that are now being harbored by generations after of Russians, of course, fomented by the West. But it's also important to note that the Navalny figure was extremely pro-market. That was one of his central political focuses. And in these parts of the world, unless you're in the imperial core, being free market means being completely in favor of having these Western multinationals come in and completely sack your country and destroy it, which is something I don't think the Russian people are ever going to let themselves undergo again. They already went through it in the 90s. It was the most horrendous situation a country could possibly be in. The reason why Putin's favorability is so high is because he's combated that thoroughly. Yes, he's not a communist, but he's combated that privatization and that model that's central for the stage of imperialism that we're in now. And a figure like Navalny, there's no way you can get traction on a political platform that wants to return to the conditions where people's lives were extremely miserable. That's just, it's not a winning platform.
Exactly. Some people forget the historical context. They forget the situation that Putin inherited. And, you know, most of the Russian people, or a lot of the Russian people today, have lived through shock therapy, have lived through capitalist restoration, and they know that it made their lives worse. So they're not eager to give into that. I like what Chris says here, the mountain people versus the city people. Navalny's the city people, and the Caucasus mountain people are the mountain people. I got tripped up on my words there, but yeah, to give you guys an example of how good Chechnya is at wrestling, the greatest wrestler in the world right now at any weight class, Abdul Rashid Sajalayev, lost his first match in years last year to a guy from Bahrain, but it wasn't actually a guy from Bahrain. It was a different guy from Chechnya who moved to Bahrain so he could compete in the Olympics, and then he beat another guy from Chechnya in the finals. That's how damn good these people are at wrestling. It's truly unbelievable. But yeah, let's listen to this Western-backed stooge, this guy who was pumped out of Western elite universities, who's never accomplished anything in his life. They're all a bunch of cockroaches. Like, that's the stupidity of racism. Like, when you see people with a swastika tattoo, it's always like the greasiest, most out of shape, like degenerate looking people you've ever seen in your life. And it's like, how the hell did these people convince themselves that they're a superior race? It's just, it's so ignorant and stupid. But yeah, that's Navalny.
So hopping on to our next story. So we have been able to discuss Tucker's interview with Putin. It has been, I think, a somewhat not a world shattering, but a very groundbreaking interview. It's gotten some estimates say up to 1 billion impressions, easily over 100 million views, maybe a few 100 million views. It allowed a population that has had the side of the other, the side of Russia and Putin. It allowed them to hear that other side. And I think, as you all should know, that other side is much closer to the truth than the distorted, upside-down narratives that our Western media pushes out there while censoring alternative narratives around these events, specifically surrounding the special military operations. So I think Putin hit it completely out of the park. I've seen many memes by Western pundits and people who are just basically stooges, intellectual stooges for American imperialism, argue that he basically deflected the first question by going on this rampage of history. Well, it's kind of symbolic because the same day that that Tucker aired the interview with Putin, where he was able to do a 30-minute recapitulation of Russian history all the way back to the 9th century, those documents coming out that Joe Biden is so mentally unstable, is dealing with such horrible memory loss issues that he literally cannot be held responsible for anything that he does. So it shows, I think, a nice symbolic contrast of where the decadent American empire is and is heading towards, full destruction unless we, step in and do what we have to do. And then where this new world is heading, a world that's actually building up society, a world that's actually lifting the living standards of people. Of course, we would see a country like China do that in a much superior ways to Russia, but Russia's also doing it. If you look at the development that Russia has had as the 5th leading economy in the whole world, it's been absolutely tremendous. The Cuban poet and martyr Jose Marti had a very famous phrase. He said that a lie can last 100 years, but the truth will catch up to it in a second. And what we've seen with Tucker's interview is that within a span of a couple hours, the truth caught up to the lies that have been spun over the last few years. And the West is not going to, they're not happy with that. They weren't happy with the interview. They threatened American Congress people, even European Union Parliament folks threatened to sanction him for doing something that, I don't know, any fucking journalist should be doing. And it's in a way unprecedented because you've had Barbara Walters interview Fidel Castro, an enemy of the state, deep state, the American imperialist state, if there's ever been one. You've had Pierre Annette interview figures like Osama bin Laden. You've had Larry King interview Muammar Gaddafi. What greater threat to American imperialism, specifically in the resource rich region of Africa, continent of Africa. And all of these people were either celebrated or treated with somewhat indifference. So what's the hostility to Tucker Carlson interviewing the president of a country that we're waging a proxy war against? It's in many ways, I think, completely unprecedented. And that should force us to rethink. Like, I know Tucker has ideas in certain areas that are not progressive. They don't certainly align with what we think is right. And I'm sure that even in these areas where we think he's right, he's not fully right. He can't explain it with the capacity that we think we can because of the Marxist outlook, because of the category of imperialism operative in our analysis. But he's playing a tremendously, perhaps as big a role in changing the consciousness of the people in the US specifically, as the most popular journalist, the consciousness with relationship to a country like Russia. It's not there with China. He still wanted to poke at China. And his real test as to whether he's actually committed to truth is whether he's willing to go to China and do an interview as he did with Putin, with Xi. I think you'll find that the surprise in the beauty and the development of Moscow that he experienced throughout those 8 days, which he said is far superior than any other American city. You'll find the same thing, if not more, if he goes to Shanghai, if he goes to Beijing, if he goes to the major cities in China. So let's see if he's really committed to truth. But either way, as communist, he has done more than any of us have done put together in changing the perspective of our people with regard to Vladimir Putin, Russia, and this new multipolar world that's arising, and that Putin defended in the face of challenging questions from Tucker. And that's, I think, an extremely positive thing, because the people are dissenting. And you can critique all you want, but if there's no positive content to your critique, if you're just nihilist about this new world that's arising, the empire is okay with that. They're okay with people who critique their practices, but then are doomers about everything else and don't see the actual alternative that imperialism is fighting against as an alternative. But if you show them the alternative and they begin to say, hey, you know, this Putin guy makes sense and this new world that he's depicting, it sounds a hell of a lot better. And having China as the epicenter that's not an imperialist power, but a non-imperialist great power, as Chavez called it, that sounds pretty cool. That's allowing them to develop a positive content to their dissent to the existing order. So a little bit of a ramble there, but yeah, I wanted to show, unless you have any comments, Eddie, I wanted to show a video of Russia, of Tucker in Russia describing his experience and how impacted he was. Okay.
In a society, one of the ways you understand a society is through its infrastructure, the places where people gather, the places where they go to travel. If you've got a lot of people in one place, it tells you a lot about the people. So with that in mind, we're standing in front of the Kievskaya metro station, and there's a train station next to it. Now, the metro station was built by Joseph Stalin 70 years ago. And the question is, how's it doing now, after 70 years? So we went into it to take a look, and what we found shocked us. Now, that's not an endorsement of Stalin, who was bad, obviously, nor is it an endorsement of the current president, Vladimir Putin. You may not like him either. But it doesn't change the reality of what we saw, or more precisely, didn't see. There's no graffiti, there's no filth, there are no foul smells, there are no bums or drug addicts or rapists or people waiting to push you onto the train tracks and kill you. No, it's perfectly clean and orderly. And how do you explain that? We're not even going to guess. That's not our job. We're only going to ask the question. And if your response is to shout at us slogans dumber than the slogans we used to call Soviet and mock, that's not really an answer. How does Russia, a country we're told is a gas station with nuclear weapons, have a subway station that normal people use to get to work and home every single day that's nicer than anything in our country? We're not going to speculate. We're just going to raise the question and wait for someone in charge to give us an answer. What is the answer? So we'll stop the lecture and let you take a look for yourself at what the Kievskaya metro station in Moscow, Russia looks like today, February 2024, in the middle of a war. Here it is.
What's interesting and what's partially mentioned is that beauty, as folks have been mentioning in the chat, that beauty was constructed by socialism in large part, and it was just sustained by modern Russia. But there's something that Deng used to say all the time: we're going to prove the superiority of Russia when even our enemies come and they're like, okay, we gotta rethink what we've been told about these places. And I think Tucker's having a moment like that now with Russia, and because of his influence, he's perhaps allowed millions of other people have a similar moment. And I can only wish that he takes the leap and does something similar with China, because if he's actually committed to truth, he'll find that China is in many ways far more developed, far more beautiful in terms of its major cities, larger than Moscow. If you look at Shanghai and Beijing and some of the other major cities, it's just, it feels like you're, I don't know, 100, 200 years in the future.
Yeah, it's interesting that he's telling Americans to question everything that they've been told and what they've been told about Russia, but then he drops the Stalin was bad, obviously. So it's like he hasn't quite shed the imperialist brainwashing. You know, he's showing us something that Stalin built. He's showing us the superiority of socialism to capitalism, but then he still has to throw in there Stalin was bad, obviously. Well, is it so obvious? Is it really so obvious? In Russia, 75% of people say that the Soviet era was the greatest era in their country's history. In Russia, Stalin is loved even more than Lenin because he industrialized the country and built all that incredible infrastructure and defeated the Nazis. Right? So you start from this this preconception of Stalin that he's bad because I've been told that he's bad, but maybe you should question that, Tucker. You're asking us to question, you know, what we've been told about Russia, and that's correct. Maybe it's time for you to question what you've been told about socialism. Yeah.
And look, frankly, I'm indifferent to whether he's being honest in his quest for truth or just an opportunist that sees that the real challenge is China wants to get Russia on the U.S. side in order to turn them against China. Objectively, regardless of the deeper plan that he has, objectively, what he's done with this interview has been extremely positive and a good test as to whether he is genuine in the beliefs that he claims to uphold, is if he is willing to go to China. But the beauty of the Russian railroads system wasn't all. By the way, I mean, China has high-speed hypersonic rail that goes at the speed of airplanes. So I wonder what he'd say to that, and rail stations that look like beautiful museums as the one in Moscow did. But here's him going to a regular grocery store and talking about how the living standard for regular people in Russia is just far superior to that we're seeing in contemporary USA. So let's give this a quick watch.
So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody hears from the United States buys groceries, and we didn't pay any attention to costs as we were just putting in the cart what we would actually eat over a week. And we all came in around $400, about $400. It was $104 US here. And that's when you start to realize that ideology maybe doesn't matter as much as you thought, corruption. If you take people's standard of living and you tank it through filth and crime and inflation, and they literally can't buy the groceries they want, at that point, maybe it matters less what you say or whether you're a good person or a bad person. You're wrecking people's lives in their country, and that's what our leaders have done to us. And coming to a Russian grocery store, the heart of evil, and seeing what things cost and how people live, it will radicalize you against our leaders. That's how I feel anyway, radicalized. We're not making any of this up, by the way, at all. So we were guessing what this would cost. Everybody.
Eddie, what are your thoughts to that? Had you seen that video?
The grocery store video?
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it because you told me about it. It's quite interesting, but not surprising. And again, if you go to Venezuela, you'll see similar things. You'll see these Iranian Venezuelan cooperative grocery stores that have been set up to ensure that people have access to food. And this is despite the horrific U.S. economic warfare efforts against Venezuela, which are directly intended to starve people and prevent people from getting food. So not only are socialist countries, or countries with forms of central economic planning like Russia, outperforming Western countries, but they're doing it while under siege. They're doing it while being sanctioned. They're doing it while having embargoes put on them, while having the IMF and World Bank attempt to infiltrate them and trap them in debt. Despite this, they're still providing affordable food for their people. And I mean, the answer is obvious. The answer is that the free market system does not provide for everybody. You need central economic planning to do that. And even, the so-called Soviet bread lines, that was just the Soviet Union rationing bread to make sure that everybody got some, to make sure that people didn't starve. And, under capitalism, we have far more bread lines, plus 2 million people who starve every year globally because they don't get enough food. So it's central economic planning that's the answer to free market inefficiencies and the inefficiencies of monopoly capitalism. And that's what Tucker's realizing here, and it's kind of blowing his mind. It's kind of Stalin bad, Soviet Union bad, but Russian grocery stores good. And, I feel like that's what's happening for a lot of Americans right now. They're seeing this and realizing that they've basically been indoctrinated with a mountain of bullshit for their entire lives.
And this is going to be a process, folks. Just because you've seen it happen once or twice, don't be like, but he has all these other views. He's negative in these ways. He's not there yet. I mean, for most of us, it was a process to get to the ideas that we're at. And hopefully, if Tucker sticks to his inquisitive spirit and challenging ethos, he'll come to a perspective that doesn't demonize socialist countries and anti-imperialist construction emergent economies as he's done with others that are not Russia. But it's very interesting. He said, I believe it was in a forum, I can't find it. I was looking for it real quick, but he mentioned that what the U.S. is doing, what Joe Biden is doing, is with these wars is evil. So I don't know. It's an interesting turn. If 4 years ago you would have asked me 4 or 5 years ago you would have asked me who's the mainstream media journalist who would have this sort of turn, this sort of semi-progressive arc, at least in issues of imperialism, I would have never guessed it. It would have been Tucker. So it's, I think, really good to see.
Yeah, it depends on when you ask me that. Because I remember, a few years ago noticing that Tucker, some of his opinions are changing. And that was part of what got me to look at the MAGA movement a little different and realize that a lot of these people like Trump's anti-imperialist, pro-worker rhetoric. And that the answer is to direct them to socialism rather than, populist demagogues. But
this is the video, by the way, where he calls, where he says that the U.S. not asking for a ceasefire is evil.
How on earth the United States of America is vetoing the stoppage of fire? How a country would veto not to continue war? How somebody is against stopping a war?
By the way, this guy asking him the question, I believe he's in Saudi Arabia. I might be wrong. Do you know where he's at, Eddie?
I don't know. I saw this video, but I don't know where it was.
There's another question where the guy's kind of challenging him on Putin and political corruption and the killing of opponents. And Tucker's like, dude, I don't want any of that shit. I've gone to so many countries. Every leader kills people. That's why I don't want to be a leader. The question is, what else do you do besides that? And what they're doing is definitely far superior than what we're doing at the States, which again, not the best answer, but not a horrible one either.
The United States is, for this moment,
is the most powerful country in the history of the world. So if you were to frame this in terms we're all familiar with, which are the most basic terms, the terms of the family, the United States would be dad, would be the father. And the father's sacred obligation is to protect his family and to restore peace within his walls. So if I come home, if I come home from work and two of my kids are fighting, what's the first thing I do? Even before I assess why they're fighting, before I gather the facts and know what's happening,
Stop the fight.
Stop fighting.
Yes.
So if I come home and I have two kids fighting, and I say, go, beat the crap out of them. I'm evil. Because I violated the most basic duty of fatherhood, which is to bring peace. Because I have the power. I'm the only one who can bring peace. And so if you see a nation with awesome power abetting war for its own sake, you have a leadership that has no moral authority, that is illegitimate. And I mean that too. And I'm not even referring to any specific region or conflict. I mean generally. And I'm deeply offended by that, deeply. And it's something that I try to express, and I'm often called a traitor for saying that. It's the opposite. I say that because I believe in the United States. I think it has been a morally superior country. And if we allow our leaders to use our power to spread destruction for its own sake, that is shameful. It's a binary, okay? It's a black and white. It's a 0 and a 1. You are either creating or you're destroying. You're improving or you're degrading. And that's how you know whether something is good or bad, whether it's virtuous or evil. If you just judge the fruits, by its fruits you will know it. And I'm very distressed and concerned that we are entering an era where this awesome force for good is instead being used for evil.
Oh, yeah, that's awful. They were so good during the Vietnam War, and when they killed 1 million communists in Indonesia, and when they overthrew the nationalist government of Iran, and when they overthrew the Guatemalan government and boiled Jacobo Arbenz to death in a bathtub because he tried to nationalize parts of United Fruit that they weren't even using. Like, this is the thing with a lot of these folks. They recognize that the U.S. is lying to them now, but they don't know that the U.S. has lied to them about history. They don't know that this is what the U.S. has always been. It's always been an empire, right? And if you can see that the media is lying to you now, you should ask yourself, were they lying to me before? Have they lied to me about history? And this is something I see more and more with these sort of Tucker Carlson types, where they really romanticize the past, right? If only we could go back to how media used to be. If only we could go back to the golden age of the U.S., you pulled that out of your ass. It doesn't exist. The media has always been owned by corporations. Now there's, back in the day, if a guy like Tucker Carlson started telling you the truth about war, he would lose his job, and that would be it. You would never hear from him again. But now with the internet, we have more ability to promote independent media outlets, to promote real anti-imperialist media. And that's the reason the truth is getting out, really. It's the advance of technology that's made it harder for the ruling class to censor dissent. But this romanticizing of America in the past is getting really old, and it's something that needs to be combated. Like, I'm so glad that these people are catching on, that these people are realizing what's going on, and I don't judge them for getting certain stuff wrong. It's a process of development and learning. Right? You have to look into these regime change efforts of the past to learn about them. But I'm getting so tired of, we just need to go back to 1950s United States. Like, no, there's a reason the 1950s United States eventually became 1980s, 1990s, 2020s United States. It's because of capitalism. It's because we left the ruling class in power. And we fought for a lot of things after World War II and after the Great Depression, the working class did, but those things have been repealed by the capitalist class. So, I'm getting tired of the romanticizing of 1950s and 1960s America. That stems from, because at that time, at least white people could have, a white picket fence and live off one person's income. And yeah, that was better. But America was never this moral authority, this shining city on a hill that these people make it out to be.
We had the color line. We had a literal fucking apartheid state. De jure up until at least 1964 with the civil rights political revolution. But this is, perhaps, who cares? With Tucker, I don't think his class position is going to give him the impetus for changing his mind about history. But for people, we're regular working people undergoing similar transitions to Tucker, realizing, well, they're lying to me now. It's so important for us to be there with the systematic Marxist analysis that can connect the dots for them, that can help them understand, make sense of why it is that things are like that, so that it's not just a fight between a chaotic evil and a non-chaotic organized good, or phrased in these very idealist, moralistic, almost like arbitrary terms, so that we can explain to them the foundations of how it is that things happen, why it is that they happen, and how the different areas are connected to each other, how the media is connected to the military-industrial complex, and how it's connected to finance capital, and how it's connected to the system as a whole, and all these different things, and how, in the fact that they can see that we're being lied to today in some areas, how they should look at other areas where they're told, oh, China's evil, Cuba's evil, the DPRK is evil. Look at that with more skepticism, because the same people are lying the hell to you in this area, they're also the same people telling you about this area. They went to the same schools, they came out of the same think tanks. Sometimes it's even the same individuals. They go to the same parties or part of the same. It's the same class that you saw lie to you in this area that tells you what to think about these other areas, these other parts of the world that we're living in right now. And then you can extend that even further into history, right? And into the other assumptions that we have of what sort of societies worked, what societies didn't work in the 20th century. So the importance of having a Marxist outlook, I think, is here essential, so that people don't end up in these sort of spontaneously dissenting worldviews, but so that we use figures like Tucker that allow their spontaneous dissenting worldviews to develop a little bit, so that we use that push to bring them to an analysis that actually helps them understand what the fuck is going on, and the fact that it's not eternal, it's not arbitrary, but it contains within its own belly, within its internally, not externally, it contains internally the potential for change, and that they are precisely that potential. If they get organized as a people, don't let themselves get fragmented and factionalized by the elite over any issue. If they unite as a people, they can radically change the conditions that they live under and the conditions of the world at large, because we are living in the belly of the beast.
For sure. Anything else on that segment?
No, that's all I had with the Tucker one.
All right. Let's move on then to the son of Bibi Netanyahu, who is hanging out in Miami, Florida, in a $5,000 a month apartment, playing VR all day. Here, I'll show you guys some of the pictures that were taken of him here. So his son Yair, sitting in a $5,000 a month Florida apartment, because nobody from Israel is actually from the Middle East. It's a bunch of Westerners and Europeans living on Middle Eastern land. And Netanyahu's son is no different. So he's been spotted recently loafing around his luxury apartment, playing VR, sipping drinks, and hanging out with his friends, as Israel has killed over 30,000 people in the Gaza Strip. So this is, you couldn't get a better example of a real welfare queen, an actual welfare queen. Most of the welfare queen, that's an old stereotype that was used back in the day to smear poor and working class black people. But the real welfare queens are the rich. The real welfare queens are the folks like Netanyahu and Elon Musk, who are living luxurious lives off of our tax dollars, off of our labor. And here you have the son of a literal genocidal maniac who will probably be arrested for corruption charges as soon as the war in Gaza is over, living in the U.S., living in our country, not even living in Israel, where our taxes are allowing him to live this luxurious lifestyle in the United States. And here he is, a real man. You can see he looks like a real... He looks like a piece of shit. He looks like a loser. Let's be completely honest. And our taxes are paying to put him in a $5,000 apartment, while meanwhile, most Americans are paying 50% of their paycheck every month in rent to a landlord. We're allowing this guy to live in luxury. I mean, it's unreal. It's unreal. So I called on Twitter to deport this man, but let's not deport him to Israel. Okay, screw that. Deport him to Yemen. Send him to the Houthis. Kick him right out of Florida and right into the Red Sea. And let the Houthis take care of him, because I'm done allowing this spoiled little bitch to live off my tax dollars while his daddy does a genocide. Fuck the Netanyahu family, and fuck our politicians for allowing them to live in luxury while genociding Palestinians.
That's beautifully said, and that goes for every war. It's not the children of the people sending us out to war that are going to war. It's not the brothers and the family members of the elite creating, fermenting these wars that are going out to war. It's usually the kids of poor people that are doing it, that are losing lives and limbs, killing people or attempting to kill people, sometimes losing their life even, in wars against people whom they have probably more in common with than the elite who sent them there. Now, I don't think this applies with the settler colonial state of Israel, but it's a general reality for other affairs. But here it's seen very clearly. The leader.
Well, it even is with Israel, because the reason that he's in this apartment is to escape the draft.
Right.
So, even in this specific case, he is, it's not Netanyahu's son who's going to fight in Gaza. He's hiding out in a luxury apartment so he doesn't have to actually do the fighting.
I meant the part concerning the fact that they have more in common with the enemy. I don't think. I think this is the exception. But with concerning that other part, yeah, absolutely. This is another example of the leaders of the elite that push people into war, not having to go out and die in the wars that their family members, their parents, were the agents in constructing. So I think you covered it exceptionally well. You don't leave much meat on the analysis table there for me, but that's always good though.
Thank you. Yeah, I know RFK was just offering free sailing, or offering a chance to win a sailing trip with him, and I want to win that trip, hop on RFK's sailboat, hang a big Israeli flag since he likes to be such a big Zionist. We'll go pick up Netanyahu's son on the way, and then we'll sail right to the Red Sea, and we'll see what the Yemeni Houthis have to say about these two Zionist clowns. But yeah, pretty funny segment there. Make sure to go boost that tweet saying that we should deport Netanyahu's son to Yemen, because we absolutely should. I'll share this too, because somebody shared this in the Twitch chat. I brought it up real quick. Hopefully this doesn't get us taken down for promoting extremism, but Netanyahu's son is an open Nazi, says our buddy Zay Squirrel. He posts Nazi memes, is celebrated by Nazis, and backs far-right Nazi politicians. This is the current leader of the genocidal Israeli regime and his family. But anyone who dares support Palestinian liberation is smeared as an anti-Semite. So the ADL has actually denounced Netanyahu's son for posting anti-Semitic things himself. And he's done work with the Daily Stormer, which is like an openly neo-Nazi website. So, yeah.
This could not be more ridiculous, dude.
Right? What a joke of a parody of a person.
If someone wrote this and brought it to, it'd be like, no, it's too ridiculous to seem real. Jesus Christ. Oh my God.
It's wild. I'll believe anything with Zionism at this point, though. And I mean, I've promoted it a million times, but my favorite book I read last year, other than The Purity Fetish and The Crisis of Western Marxism, was Ghassan Kanafani's On Zionist Literature, because it's you get these people nowadays, and I'm glad they're on our side, but I made a tweet about this recently, and it got a lot of traction. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, I support Israel. I just don't support what they're doing right now. And it's like, well, Israel was founded on the expulsion of 70% of Palestinian people from their own land and the seizure of 48% of that land and mass killings and destruction and what's called the Nakba. But even before that, in the late 1800s and early 1900s, when the Zionist entity was first becoming a thing, when Zionism was first becoming a thing, it was always socioeconomic elites within the Jewish community who wanted to use Judaism as a way to justify the colonization of Palestine that they would benefit from economically. It's always been a colonial project. It's always been based in Jewish supremacy, and it's always been against the idea of assimilation of the Jewish people into Europe and into the US, which is the same ideological premises the Nazis had. The Nazis say, you know, Jews can't assimilate into Europe, so we need to exterminate them. The Zionists say Jews can't assimilate into Europe, so we need to kick the Palestinians off their land and take it. So Zionism, this is what it's always been. It's always been a fascistic or even Nazi ideology from its very inception. And this is just after, you know, 130 years of the development of Zionism. It's reached this absurd stage where you have these clown people like Netanyahu's son, who's basically beyond parody, where he's literally an anti-Semitic Zionist. So, yeah. Anything else on that?
No. I think you covered it extensively, but it seems like YouTube has blocked our ability to receive super chats.
That's not good.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't. We don't have any email telling us that we've done.
Your channel is no longer monetizing due to an inactive AdSense association.
Where
Your
are you seeing
AdSense
that?
account has been suspended. Looks like they suspended us from getting paid.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
What the fuck?
This could be due to country restrictions, invalid click activity, or other policy reasons. That sucks so bad.
Well, that's horrendous. That's also the funding for the institute.
Yeah.
Oh fuck. Well, there's censorship, folks.
Yup.
That's you saw it live. I think that's the first time that's we've seen censorship live. Is it like an account that was disconnected or something, or is it?
I'm looking at it right now. I'll deal with it maybe after the stream.
Okay.
It says, due to the war in Ukraine, we will pause monetization of content that exploits, dismisses, or condones the war. Underneath, it says action required. There's something to check in your AdSense account. So hopefully we can fix it. Hopefully we can do something about it. But it also says right under that, due to the war in Ukraine, we are pausing monetization of anyone that condones the war. What a joke. It explicitly says that, dude. It explicitly calls for censorship.
Navalny is a hero and Putin is a criminal. No, man, I'm just fucking with y'all.
Darn
Navalny's
dirty Putin. Yeah, everybody check out our Patreon account. That's the best way to fund us. That's the only place where we won't, I don't think we'll get cut off from funding.
Hopefully not. Fuck.
Yeah, please help us out, because we've been suspended for AdSense, or from Google AdSense for telling you guys the truth. So that's what happens when you tell the truth. Use Streamlabs for super chats instead. We could do that. That's what we should do, actually. American Exceptionalist.
Well, we've been preparing actually to transition to Streamlabs.
Yeah.
For other reasons, but if it helps with the super chats, that would be good as well. Well, that's extremely tragic. If you want to support us, and again, we wouldn't be able to do a fraction of what we do without funding. We don't live in a socialist country and a people's democratic dictatorship that can fund the People's Institute. So if you have the means, please do consider becoming a Patreon or donating through other means. Are there any other means to donate besides YouTube?
Patreon, and then we have Buy Me a Coffee. You can do that.
Okay. Yeah. So if you have the means and would like to support our work, you can do that at patreon.com youtube.com/Midwestern Marks. Do we have any other stories for today, or were we able to cover?
Yep. Let's go.
We also had a ex-list actor, Michael Rappaport, unable to find apartheid.
Oh yeah, we have that too. I can
The video
pull
that
up
Rathbone did about it was pretty funny.
I didn't
Here's-
see it. Ours went
he's-
pretty viral.
He's walking around a suburban part of New York, and he's like, "Where are the projects? I hear everyone talking about there's projects here. There's no projects."
That's funny. There's one story I want to cover. One sec. I'm trying to put out a tweet about us being demonetized quick.
We also have to cover Rafa. We had, I think, the most viral video we've had in a very long time. I want to say maybe, I don't know, which got what, like 1.7 million views or something around over 1 million views. It was on Rafa and how the Zionists or Zio-Nazi Israeli state used the Super Bowl to distract people from the bombing campaign they've been waging on Rafah. And if you don't know what Rafah is a place that before October 7th had around 150 or so inhabitants. But since they've bombed the shit out of Gaza, they were dropping at some point leaflets like "Go to the South," and Rafah was mentioned as one of the safe places where they can escape the bombing. So Rafah's population, I think it was somewhere around 1.7 million people. Does that number? I think that's right. And so basically what they did was bomb people out of the north of Gaza, tell them that they'll be safe in Rafah. And once this place increases in its capacity by, I don't know, 100 and something percent, from 150,000 people to 1.7 million people, they start bombing it extensively, killing hundreds, injuring hundreds in the middle of the Super Bowl, so that people can be distracted from it. And as Eddie was showing the video, this is a common practice for Israeli bombing campaigns. When they bomb intensively, they usually try to coordinate it with some other great event that's going to steal airtime and distract away from the horrendous genocidal crimes that they are participating in.
Yeah, let's check it out. So on Super Bowl Sunday, while Americans are all distracted watching a football game, Israel has bombed the village of Rafah. And Rafah is one of the most crowded places in Gaza right now, as it's become a last place of refuge for people fleeing the bombing campaign that's now lasted about 120 days. It's almost impossible to deny that Israel's purposefully targeting civilians here. And one thing I've learned from studying Israel's attacks on Gaza in the past is that they often time these attacks when other world events are going on, so people are distracted. One of their most heinous attacks on Gaza in recent memory happened the same day that a Malaysian airliner jet was shot down over Ukraine. So that was covered in the news, and the attack on Gaza essentially went unnoticed. Oh shoot, I did not mean to do that. So as I pointed out in this tweet, I have no doubt that the Zionists timed this attack on Rafah to coincide with the Super Bowl when Americans are distracted. Meanwhile, the Israeli lobby spent $7 million to get an advertisement played during the Super Bowl that was sympathetic towards Israel. Americans are being spoon-fed pro-Israeli propaganda with our football, while Israel is turning Rafah into an inferno. It truly doesn't get more unspeakably horrific than this. So this is an age-old tactic of the Israeli government. They do this all the time. They'll time an attack at the same time as a world event so that people are distracted. And this video, though, got 1.8 million views and almost 400,000 likes. So I hope there's some Zionists listening right now. Maybe those Zionists who played one of our TikTok videos at a conference. They held a conference about combating pro-Palestinian content on TikTok. And You're not doing a very good job, guys. We're beating your ass in the propaganda war. No wonder they want to demonetize us, because Israel tried to use the Super Bowl as cover for bombing Rafah, and now there are videos explaining what went down going viral. I wrote an open letter to Norman Finkelstein on TikTok saying, this is more people are turning their eyes to Palestine by the day, and the Israeli propaganda campaigns are failing. The Hezbollah, they literally have a name for it in Hebrew, Hezbollah, which means the pro-Zionist propaganda. It's failing, and this information is getting out there. They can no longer cover it up. The internet makes it impossible. All they can do is lobby social media platforms and Silicon Valley oligarchs like YouTube and TikTok to demonetize us and take us down. That's what they've done, but hasn't stopped us yet. We're still going viral and still getting information to the people. So,
right. And the day that it happened, a very curious thing took place on Twitter, where Rafah was like the 24th trending thing, even though it had, I don't know, tenfold times as many interactions, hashtags as Patrick. Is it Patrick Mahomes? I don't watch football, so excuse me.
yes,
Who is the number one trending figure at the time? So that's a very distinctive form of censorship, because as we know, in the era of prophilicity, to get something trending, whether you do it artificially through bots or not, means that it has the potential for an exponential growth. It's for more people to see it, for more eyes to find it. And Rafah should have been the number one thing trending, and it wasn't, for, I think, deliberate attempts to prevent more people from seeing it. But yet people are still seeing it. People are so awakened to the horrendous crimes that are happening against the Palestinians, the genocide that's taking place, that they're undercutting most of the attempts that we've seen from the elites to censor. And they can censor big accounts as they've had, but what they can't do is censor the millions and millions of people that are sympathetic, that have small accounts, that maybe for some of them this is the first time commenting on politics in their social media. That's what they can censor. They can't censor the people's will. They can do it in these forms, but the truth is still going to get out there. And as I mentioned when we were talking about Navalny, when we were talking about the Tucker-Putin interview, the truth can last. The truth can catch up to a lie within a second. It doesn't matter how much time the lie lasts. It could lose its position of prominence pretty soon. And I think that's what we've seen with the narrative surrounding the Israeli state.
Absolutely. Got another video related to Israel here. There's a Jewish reggae singer named Matisyahu, and recently he was supposed to perform in Tucson, Arizona, and Santa Fe, New Mexico, but some of the workers who were supposed to work his concert said they wouldn't. They protested and refused to work it. Now, Matisyahu accused them of being anti-Semitic, and said that either that or they thought they were advocating for Palestine, but actually they weren't justified in doing that, according to him, because he supports Israel and Palestine, as if that's possible, as if you can support both countries when one is genociding the other. I support the Jewish people and Hitler's Germany. I mean, that's literally what he's saying. But either way, after I saw his statement and him calling these people anti-Semitic, I decided to look into what he had actually said publicly about Israel and Zionism and Palestine. And wouldn't you know it, he's actually made a lot of explicitly political statements. So these workers aren't anti-Semitic. They're protesting his pro-Zionist statements. But we'll get into that unless you have anything to say, Carlos.
Yeah, I mean, this is just another example of, how crazy it is that people that have such horrendous political and and moral compasses can produce such beautiful art. Because that song, One Day, man, it's a fucking hit, dude. It would be such a great peace song if it wasn't for the fact that the person singing it is a fucking ardent Zionist and genocide supporter. So very tragic. But I mean, we got Wagner. Wagner's a wonderful composer, but extremely anti-Semitic. And I'm sure we can also think of other people who produce great music and who also have perhaps some not very nice views about quite a few things. I think you know who I'm talking about, Eddie. I'm constantly listening to the old hymn and not the new hymn. I think people know who I'm talking about now. But anyways.
All right, let's play. I just got the that was good. All right, let's play this video. Gay singer and former Orthodox Jew Matisyahu recently had some workers refuse to work one of his concerts in Tucson, Arizona. And as a former huge fan of his, I found the situation really interesting. Because after the concert was canceled because some of the staff were unwilling to work, Matisyahu suggested that they were either driven by anti-Semitism or they had confused their empathy for the Palestinian people with hatred for someone like him who holds empathy for both the Israelis and the Palestinians. Basically saying these workers have no right to protest him on political grounds because he supports Israel and Palestine. But is that really true? Let's look at some of the statements that Matisyahu has made to the media since Israel began their bombing campaign that's taken the lives of over 24,000 Palestinians. First of all, he called Palestinian protesters hypocrites for not also protesting America, which he said was founded on an actual genocide, implying that what Israel's doing to Gaza right now is not an actual genocide. He's also called out celebrities who he says are too afraid to support Israel, even though it's supporting Palestine that will lose you job opportunities in Hollywood and get you attacked by the Israeli lobby. He's also parroted the Israeli narrative that this war in Gaza is to destroy Hamas, not to target civilians. He said, I would like to see any terrorist, Hamas, or person who believes Israel has no right to exist. I would like Israel to destroy those people. Seems like kind of inflammatory rhetoric as Israel is bombing residential areas and civilian infrastructure, but he also said he wants to see Gaza transformed into a place where Jews can go and says, I would like to see the destruction of evil, which kind of sounds like he's just saying he wants Israel to finish their project of colonization. Gaza is the only remaining place in Palestine where you don't have Zionist supremacy. And that's just because it's a concentration camp where all of the Palestinians from these other parts of the land have been forced into. And lastly, the marketing of Matisyahu's recent music has been explicitly political. They've been marketing his recent EP as a response to October 7th and even said that the songs are about October 7th. So these workers who are protesting you are well within their right to protest against the explicitly political statements that you've made. They're protesting your support for Israel. They're not protesting the fact that you're Jewish. And the fact that you immediately jump to accusing them of being anti-Semitic shows that you've really internalized the Zionist logic and the Zionist talking points. And that is why I'm a former fan of Matisyahu. Even though some of his music's still good. I'm sorry, some of it is. I mean, One Day is still a great song, but it's like literally in that song he sings, one day there'll be no more war and our children will play. And then he turns around and he supports Zionism and Israel, which has killed 6,000 children, 6,000 little kids in the last 130 days. I mean, I know Carlos is a father. I coach little kids for a living when I'm not doing Midwestern Marks. To imagine losing any of them to airstrikes is despicable, disgusting. It makes me sick to my stomach. But 6,000 kids murdered in cold blood. And this guy who sings songs and makes money talking about ending the wars and letting children play, he's calling for Gaza to be destroyed and transformed into a place where Jewish people can go. And he's calling other celebrities cowards for not supporting Israel. I mean, what a hypocrite. And I know that, you know, Jewish people are indoctrinated with propaganda nowadays. Most people trying to tie Zionism to Judaism. But there are so many Jewish people nowadays who see through this bullshit. There are so many Jewish people who stand up for Palestine and say, no, this is wrong. You know, I'm not going to be tricked into supporting a genocide because you tell me I have to, or otherwise I'm anti-Semitic or I'm anti-Jewish. So if other people can do it, Modest Yahoo can do it. Right. And he also called other celebrities cowards for not standing up for Israel. Dude, what opportunities get taken away from you when you stand up for Israel? Justin Bieber stood up for Israel. Amy Schumer's done nothing but spout literal genocidal rhetoric nonstop for the last 130 days, calling for everybody in Gaza to be wiped out. How has it hurt her career? Not at all. In fact, Michael Rappaport has no career. He's a loser. Nobody wants to hire him in Hollywood. So he's made himself a Zionist propagandist to try and restart his career, right? It's the only way that loser can keep his name in the news. Meanwhile, we had the Scream actress who stood up for Palestine, immediately lost her job, right? It's standing up for Palestine that loses you job opportunities and gets you attacked by AIPAC. Or we have all these college people attached to the colleges who have been pushed out of their positions for allowing pro-Palestine protests to happen on campus. It's standing up for Palestine that gets you attacked, not Israel. And as someone, I seriously, Modest Yahoo, if you would have asked me in high school who my favorite musical artist is, there's a good chance I would have told you Modest Yahoo. But that was because he stood for peace. That was because he stood for an end to war, and I deeply resonated with that. So to see this betrayal and now him cheering on genocide is disgusting. And I want to repeat what one of our friends told us on Twitter, because I should have known this. I should have seen this from the beginning. Never trust a reggae band with no black people in it. They're bound to be racist.
That's some hardcore wisdom right there. There's no excuse at this point. I think a lot of people are realizing that there's just no excuse. If you tell me, I got caught up in the flare of October 7th, and for a week I was like, okay, but especially for these people that have been so indoctrinated their whole life. I mean, for leftists, progressives, that shouldn't happen. But after a 4-month campaign, genocidal campaign, a country has been taken to the ICJ on behalf of a country that knows a thing or two about apartheid and the dehumanization of a people. There's just no excuse, man. There's absolutely no excuse. So many kids, women that have died, young men that have the rest of their lives in front of them killed, and regular aged men too, because those lives matter as well. It's important to highlight women and children, but regular men die, and it's not just a picnic. It's horrendous. We're talking about a conservative estimate is the 30,000. There's dozens of thousands under the rubble. 90% has been displaced of a people that 70% of whom were already displaced. So it's just, there's no excuse. There's absolutely no excuse. It's monstrous. And there's this dialectic at play when you dehumanize a people, as the Zionists have done the Palestinians, where in reality, it's a boomerang effect where you're the one that is actually dehumanizing yourself by dehumanizing these people, by oppressing them in the way that you are doing them, by murdering them in the way that you are doing them. Because I find it very difficult to find the humanity in the completely inhumane positions that these people have been taking for 4+ months of genocide, of us seeing consistently hundreds of images of kids with their limbs blown off, kids having to undergo surgeries without anesthesia, doctors having to lose their child right in front of them because they couldn't operate with anesthesias, hospitals being bombed, supposedly safe areas like Rafah being bombed, international UN workers being killed. It's just horrendous. Mothers being sniped by the IDF alongside their children. It's It's the most despicable, barbaric, inhumane thing in the fucking world. And they think that they're dehumanizing the Palestinians. No, it is in the Palestinians today where humanity sees itself. It is in the Palestinians where we see dignity. And as you know, some people have been saying, it used to be the case that you would say, look at those Palestinians, how heroic. They seem like heroes. Now you say, look at those heroes. They seem like Palestinians. Because if there's something that the Palestinians have shown us is the best qualities of what it means to be human. And the opposite is the case for a population that supports 99% the genocidal operations their countries carrying forth. They've completely dehumanized themselves. There's perhaps even worse than the German population. I highly doubt that there was that much support for the German government as there is today for the Nazi genocidal government of Israel. It's just a completely dehumanizing boomerang effect that they're doing to themselves. And it's, it's going to be hard if they ever rectify to sleep at night. Because if we know something about history is that these events and the perpetrators are not going to be able to just sit idly by and not have their conscience weighing down on them as humanity acknowledges the crimes that have been committed, even those that at one point funded them and carried them forth. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Anything else on Matisyahu?
No, I think we covered that fairly thoroughly.
We wanted to do an Ask Me Anything, but I didn't know YouTube would suspend our super chat. So please, again, if you were going to send us super chats, please become a supporter on patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. Maybe I'll, you know what I'll do is I'll make a post in the Patreon requesting questions for the Ask Me Anything. And then the next stream, we'll just we'll answer all of the questions. So don't let me forget to do that after the stream. Actually, let me, whatever. I won't forget. I was going to write it down, but I don't have a pen. But yeah, so support us patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. I'll answer all your questions. Oh, I had 3 pens sitting in my chair. So yeah.
We can also, I don't know if you have handy the link to the Buy Me a Coffee or to the PayPal if folks can donate directly to those. That would work as well, and then shoot us a question. I don't know. This is a hard hit, folks. As you know, you hear us repeat all the time. Like these donations are part of the backbone of the institute, the financial backbone. So having those blocked is them coming at the roots of our project. This is how we're able to do our printing projects, how we're able to keep afloat and do all of the things that we do. So it's very disappointing, but it's in your hands. This is the People's Institute. If you want to help with funding, there's plenty of other means that could be done through, perhaps even better than YouTube. That takes, I don't know, like 30% of what you donate. So
yeah, I see someone saying your first mistake was relying on YouTube. I mean, we don't. We have all these different sources of funding, and we promote the Patreon more than any other. But we make YouTube videos. We stream. So the easiest way for people to send us money is through super chats. So it's not that we've relied on YouTube. We have many different, not many different, but various different income sources. And we've been banned from TikTok, demonetized from TikTok in the past, demonetized from YouTube. And we always have other ones going, but we do a lot of streams and we do a lot of YouTube videos. So this just naturally has become a way that people give us a lot of money. So it hurts to have censorship on this platform. Yeah, I guess you can blame us if you want, but but it's not really like we tried to make it happen this way. Under capitalism, you get money wherever you can get it from, and YouTube has just sort of naturally become one of the ways that we do that. But I do have one more video that I wanted to play. I'm sure the person who asked me this.
Coke versus Mentos 3. Coke versus Mentos 3.
Why is everyone on TikTok always yelling? Like every
Coke
time
versus
I open
Mentos.
TikTok, it's somebody just screaming at their screen. But someone asked me earlier. I'm sure they're probably not still hanging around in the stream, but they asked me, "Can you talk about Vaush's folder, and how his association with the label socialist makes our movement deeply unpopular?" Yes, I made a TikTok video about this when it first happened. I'm just like, first of all, not surprised. Second of all, I don't want to talk about this. Vaush disgusts me. Third of all, this isn't important. But people care. I've seen tons of videos made about it. I've seen tons of people realizing for the first time that Vaush is a bad person. So I do think it's worth talking about just a little bit because it's such a popular thing. And, you know, I'm personally not surprised that Vaush, that his sexual proclivities are just as disgusting as his politics, because he's an individualistic, hedonistic person who sits in a gaming chair all day and uses leftist politics to make a living and then brags about how much money he makes off of it. So he's a gross person. I'm not surprised he got caught horsing around. You know, I'm looking forward to seeing his explanation video because I want to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. You know, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but it truly is really gross what he did. So no pun intended, of course. So anything to say about this, Carlos, before I play the TikTok I made about it?
I have no idea what I'm about to watch.
Do you know what he did yet?
I don't. You're catching me by surprise. I have no idea what the fuck.
Oh my! So all my horse jokes just went right over your head.
Yeah.
He got caught with. I should explain this first because I don't explain it in the TikTok video. He on stream opened up a folder that he had of explicit content, and in it was cartoon horse pornography and cartoon lolly, which is cartoon pornographic
right?
drawings that are meant to simulate underage children.
Oh, I thought you were talking about the bunny from Looney Tunes.
Mm-mm.
Lola.
Oh, no, not Lola. That would be better. That would be acceptable.
That would be better. Oh my God. Well, now I repeat your sentiment. Not surprising.
Exactly.
Not surprising.
So here was my reaction.
Am I supposed to comment on the Bush situation? Am I supposed to say something about this? Am I supposed to comment on the Bush situation? Am I supposed to say something about this? You all probably know what happened already, right? He opened up some folders containing disgusting content that he was downloading and watching while on stream. I'm gonna say what it was.
Downloads porn. What the fuck?
Right, dude? That's what I like. You have the internet, bro. That's why Noah said, no, I can't believe you didn't see this in our group chat. Noah was like, he's got to be a Fed, dude. Like, who downloads it and then has it up on stream and pulls it up, unless you're a Fed just trying to make socialists look bad?
Oh, my God. That is ridiculous.
I mean, if of everybody, I've met some bad people in my life. But like Vaush is the epitome of everything I don't want to be in this life. You got one life to live, and I want to be anything except Vaush.
It's because I don't want my tick
on every level. Arrogant, narcissistic.
These are the faces of Palestine.
Imperialistic.
Am I supposed to?
And a creep. Sorry, I didn't mean to click off.
Disgusting content that he was downloading and watching while on stream. I'm not going to say what it was because I don't want my TikTok getting banned, but you know, you can Google it. And I wish I could say I'm surprised that Vish's sexual proclivities are just as disgusting as his imperialist politics, but frankly, I'm not. There's a reason I've criticized this guy in the past for more than just politics. There's a reason I've said he's glued to his gaming chair. Because not only do I think he's wrong for siding with NATO and condemning different revolutionary movements around the world, but I also just think he's a horrible example of what a socialist should be. He's individualistic, he's hedonistic, and he sits in his gaming chair all day feeding his individualistic desires. I just think that's a lifestyle that's going to lead you into dark places, and it's the exact opposite of what socialists should try to be like. If you want to know what I think socialists should be, read Che Guevara's Socialism and Man in Cuba. Che says that we should try to shed our individualistic and consumeristic desires that are implanted in us by capitalism. And we should try to be upstanding, disciplined, virtuous people who prioritize the good of the community over the good of our own individual self. Once you start calling yourself a socialist, you represent a movement and a struggle that's much bigger than you. And you should try to act as a positive representation of what socialism's all about, both in your politics and in your daily action, in your interactions with your community. And that's why I think Vush could be a Fed. He's what a lot of people think socialism is. It's just sitting in your gaming chair all day looking at looking at creepy stuff. If the average person thinks this is what socialism is, they're going to want nothing to do with it. So try to cultivate virtue, understand that nobody's perfect, but you should do the best you can. Unsubscribe from Vash, subscribe to Midwestern Marx, and watch my debate with him about Ukraine. Be like Ivan Drago, not like Vush. Except don't take steroids. Am I supposed to comment on?
Unless you want to get huge.
Well, I think you broke it down perfectly. We need a revolution of values. With the current values that we have, we can't develop cadre. Part of cadre formation is not just teaching people how to adopt the Marxist worldview, how to think like a Marxist, like someone who's wielding in their minds the most advanced way of understanding the world humanity has developed. But it's also a revolution in the values, a revolution in our ethical approach to the world. We have to, as I wrote in a recent article for Groundhog Day, we have to be what Phil turns into at the end of the Groundhog Day movie, a person that's just guided by virtue, guided by compassion, and that becomes basically the person of the community, the person everyone looks up to. And the imperialists want you to have an image of socialists that is completely antagonistic, the complete opposite to that. And as you mentioned, in many ways, this Vouch character embodies that degenerate, loser, egotistical, hedonist, shallow hedonist substance of what they want you to think socialism is, but what in reality couldn't be any farther from the actual socialist communist tradition.
Exactly. And we've written about this pretty extensively. There's that article from Che that we published. Carlos published an analysis of that article from Che and talking about how we can apply that idea today and talking about us developing a socialist virtue ethic. Noah wrote his piece, Walk the Walk, how communists should conduct themselves. And yes, not only is Vaush cheering on every imperialist regime change intervention, but he's also acting in a way that's going to be alienating and off-putting to working class people while calling himself a socialist. So whether he's a Fed or not, he does the work of the Feds. The Feds love Voosh. They don't love Midwestern Marx. There's a reason we've been demonetized for talking about geopolitics, but Voosh hasn't been demonetized for bringing up cartoon horse pornography on stream.
That's an excellent way to cap off the very intellectually intensive Voosh segment.
Yes.
But it is an important thing to realize, and don't just listen to it and accept it passively. Like, try to actually commit yourself to the best of your capacity. It's hard to be virtuous, living the sort of alienated, in many ways degrading lives that capitalism forces upon us. But within what is in your control, try to be the best sort of person you can be. Try to be a good comrade to your comrades. Try to be someone others can learn from, so someone that others can emulate. That's the essence of the speech that Che gives to the youth, the communist youth. Like, try to be the best, not in this like I'm going to bring everyone down and step on heels, approach that we find in bourgeois individualism. But I'm going to be the best in a way that is aimed at having other people see what a communist is like, and having them see in who we are the embodiment of the sort of society that we want to create, the sort of society that produces in general people with a certain character that is, as Che says, more truly human, that embodies the best of human, of the best human characteristics. So try to really internalize that. Be the opposite of Vaush. Be an Eddie. Be a Noah. Don't be a Vaush. Don't be any of these other cats that are calling themselves socialists, but drooling in bourgeois. I don't want to say degeneracy, but fuck it, I said it. Degeneracy, bourgeois degeneracy, middle class activities that are just foreign to what socialists ought to be like.
Absolutely. All right. You got any more segments or topics you want to cover today? Gotten through all of our planned ones.
Yeah, we ran through everything. Yeah, you really caught me off guard with the Vaush.
I figured you would know. I mean, we talked about it in the group chat earlier. I'm surprised you didn't see.
No, I think it might have been Monday. I was fucked up after the bombing of Rafah, dude. I had to teach Monday. David Hume was the second day of covering his inquiry concerning human understanding, and it was tough to get class started. I mentioned this to you guys, but it's a real crisis of like meaning, a crisis of purpose. Like, you know, where I'm sitting here about to teach how Hume challenges the notions of causality and Newtonian physics, and I mean, what the fuck does that matter as children are getting fucking massacred while people just sit idly by and watch the Super Bowl? So I literally had to sit there in front of class for like 2 minutes and just breathe, and I was able to get a couple words out, but and then once I got rolling, it was fine. But Monday was a tough day for me. I don't know if that's when the horse thing came out, but yeah, I wasn't horsing around.
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, it was brutal. I'm glad I at least got some sense of, at least I got that video to go viral.
Yeah.
You know, when I was making it, I'm like, this is something that should go viral, but I don't know if it will because I have Israel in the title and I have Palestine in the title, but it did. So that's good. Yeah. So, yeah, I guess we can just say, please support us on patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. It's the best place to support us. You can also donate directly to our PayPal. Check out our printing press, all of our published works on www.midwesternmarks.com. But yeah, Patreon's the best way to do it. That's the only source of funding that we have that's never been suspended.
And if you're already a Patreon and you're the sort of person that frequently helps fund the Institute through super chats, I think Patreon also has a one-time payment option that you could do. So I guess think of it as super chats for today's stream if you'd like. But yeah, this is in a way pretty devastating. But
hopefully it's just a technical thing. Like maybe I need to update our taxes, but I don't think so. I think it's a suspension for political reasons.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, I have a different outro song to play today. I want to mix it up. Are you cool with that?
100%. Yeah, let's do it.
All right. It's your boy. Thank you so much, everybody.
Oh my God.
I think Carlos knows what I'm about to play now. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been fantastic. Patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. Midwestern Marks on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, all those other platforms. Solidarity. We'll see you next time.
It's your boy, Big Tucker.
It's your boy, Trump the Dud.
Hey, how did I get in the studio?
Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts ya.
The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker. Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker.
They tried to stop me from interviewing Putin. The whole world lost their damn mind and they're proving. The land of the free, just not speech, is confusing. Pull up on Big T, you know that I'm shooting. I'm just a journalist, getting to the truth. CNN and Fox are dead, no one cares about the news. Legacy media doesn't appeal to the youth. These politicians don't give a damn about me or you. George Stephanopoulos and Barbara Walters interviewed Putin and so did other reporters. But as soon as Tucker goes to Kremlin, quick, call the lawyers. Apparently, I disrupt the whole new world order, protecting Ukraine before our own southern border. Start another foreign war so they can money launder. They want me to apologize, but I'm not sorry. The left is just mad me and Putin did karate.
Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker. Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker.
Hey, how did I get in the studio? Trucker, I wasn't a, why what? I was an I drove a truck. Tell trucker calls and then I drove a truck. Oh, no. Oh, my family used to live in Russia. Ireland, Russia, Irish Russia. I'm Irish Russia. I knew Russia when I was younger. He was a bad dude. He would rub the head on my legs, this Russian man in the back of an alleyway. Someone tell this Vladimir Crouton that he's got nothing on Straight and Joe.
Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker. Everyone saying Russia, Russia, Russia. Fake news, no wonder no one trusts you. The United Nation filled with suckers. The only journalist I trust is Tucker.